Welcome to the Empower LEP Podcast. I'm your host, Jana Parker. I'm a licensed educational psychologist. I'm a group practice owner, and I am the owner and a mentor at Empower LEP. Today, I hosted Liz Angoff for the second time. It was amazing to have another conversation with her. If you haven't checked out her episode 21, you should. But we talked about all of the resources that she has available for practitioners and for parents. We go into AI, explaining assessment results to kids, all the things that just make her a stellar contributor to our field. So I really hope that you enjoy listening to this conversation with Dr. Liz Angoff as much as I always enjoy talking to her. All right, welcome back, everybody, to the Empower LEP Podcast. I am here today with Dr. Liz Angoff. Thank you for joining me for the second time.
Thank you for having me. I am super excited for this.
Well, thank you. I love how you put on your application form that you're doing it again because you love talking to me.
Yes, true.
It's like I love talking to her too. Yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time because I know you are a very busy person, but you are such I don't know, you're just like, you give so much of yourself. And I appreciate that you're also giving time to the podcast and to get to our listeners.
That's so sweet. Thank you. Well, thank you for giving me a place to speak and step up on my soapbox, as it were.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, my pleasure. Okay, so today, just so listeners know, if you go back and listen to episode 21 of the Empower LEP podcast, you can listen to Liz's whole story, which I find really inspiring and fascinating. The experience that you have kind of coming into where you are now, you can really see how the different steps that you took through your journey have led you into this place that you are now. And one thing that really stood out to me is how you really think about really understanding the needs of the community, whether it be the families and the kids that we serve or our professional community. You're really kind of looking for what is the need and then how do I fill that? And you, on both sides, both for families and for our field of psychologists, you really are kind of leading the way with a lot of just a lot of new ways of looking at things and content and ways to deliver information and things we can do with AI. And so I was hoping today we could really just get into all of the things that you're doing and you can share with us so that people can take advantage of all that you have to offer.
Sure. I'm excited to talk about all of those things. How we communicate things with families, I think, is something I've become really passionate about. I mean, it started with how do we communicate this to kids? And there just was a dearth of information out there about how we talk to kids directly. But the more I talk to kids, the more I realize that we actually need resources for how to communicate with families and teachers and just like to be able to get what's in our head out into the world so that families and educators can act on it and really support our kids.
Yep, absolutely. Well, okay. So give us kind of like if somehow someone hasn't been familiarized already with what you have available to our audience, give us like a high level so that people understand what we're talking about here. And then we'll kind of dig into the kids, the families, and the professionals.
Sure. So I about 12 years ago now had my first case where I really was asked by a family to talk to kids, to their child about the assessment results. And it was a complete fail. And so I started gathering resources for myself and trying to crack this nut of how we talk to kids, and realized that nobody else knew either. And it was one of these questions that I was so afraid to ask because it would obviously reveal that I have no idea what I'm doing, but it turned out nobody knows what they're doing. So I started to put together all of these things for me and for my practice, but realize that other people might be interested in these things too because they weren't available. And it really started with this book I created called the Brain Building Book, which was a PowerPoint presentation for the longest time. And then I finally, during the pandemic, with a little push from a good friend of mine, got it published and put it out to the universe, i.e. Facebook, to say, is anybody else interested in something like this? And it exploded
Yeah.
because there was such a need. And so I got really excited about putting not only that resource out into the world, but the other things that I was building to help facilitate these conversations. Because if you've worked with one child, you've worked with one child. They're all so different, and we need a really robust toolbox. And so I started putting my toolbox online, essentially, for all the different things I was using, ways I was talking to kids about things, the strategies I was discovering, and I was trying to operationalize themselves. I was trying to operationalize them for me so that I could use them more easily and reference them in my practice. And I put them out publicly because I know that this is such important work. And it's been amazing because it started a conversation. So, one of the resources on my website is one of the first ones is this spreadsheet of visuals and videos that help us explain different diagnoses or profiles to kids. And it is a living document. People write to me all the time to say, hey, have you seen this video? I notice it's not on your list. And then it goes on the list. Or I have a new kid that I started seeing a lot more OCD recently in my practice, for example. And so I've done a lot of a real deep dive into resources to figure out how to explain OCD to kids and the different kids that we get in the way that it presents. And so that was kind of a whole new thing that went into the spreadsheet. And the resources are really evolving as I do as a practitioner. And it feels so good to just have them out in the world, because it's the way that I can get feedback and feel like I'm not alone in this pursuit of communicating things to kids and now families as it kind of expands.
Yeah, well, that resource document is so helpful. It's kind of like open source. I don't know. That was the
Yeah.
word that came to me just now, like open source. No, but it's so helpful. I reference that a lot. I also, whenever I'm doing feedback with a student now, I use a adjusted version for my practice of your summary sheet. And I kind of combine like strengths and areas of growth and, diagnoses and next steps. And sometimes I write a little letter to the kid, depending on how old they are, so that they have. So I'm actually doing one at 4 o'clock today with the kid virtually and using that, so it is really helpful. And it's just nice that we can reference those things and just use them, as it fits us. Because I think I told you this last time, like I'm not good at creating things at all. And so to have something that I can adjust to what I need has been really helpful. And to send parents resources that I can just kind of like grab has also been really helpful.
That's been the fun part of explaining brains, because there's so many resources up there that I created that this is how I use it in my practice. So it's just the tool that I use. But just with the power of Google Docs and, being able to share, anybody can make copies of this stuff and then adjust it for your own. And I encourage you to do it. I appreciate when you keep my little, footer
Oh
on
yeah,
there.
of course.
But outside of that, like, go for it, like go crazy. I think that we all do best when we have something to kind of like jump off of. And so that's the hope, is not to put out a finished product, but to put out something that will be an inspiration for, I could just tweak this little thing and then it'll work for me. And that is 100% the intention of not recreating the wheel and just really benefiting from the collective experience.
Yeah. Well, thank you for all of that. Um, And so, yeah, tell us a little bit more about, so we have summary sheets, um, you have the spreadsheet, and talk a little bit about, if a practitioner, well, I don't know, should we start? Yeah, I guess we're on practitioners. So let's talk a little bit about how practitioners use your website, explainingbrains.com, and how they get on and what happens when they join your mailing list.
Magical things. Magical things
It's
happen when
true.
you join my
It's
mailing
true.
list. You get lots of, you only get valuable stuff. I will tell you that. I never put anything out on the mailing list that I wouldn't want to read myself. And I throw away a lot of mailers and
Yeah.
newsletters that I get. And so I try and make it really, really easy and useful, and that there's something that you can walk away with in every single thing that I put out there. But if you go to explainingbrains.com, the very first tab is practitioner tools. And so that's for us. And there are, the blog is there, which is just a series of posts that, the first thing that you'll see is a series of posts. It's how to explain ADHD, how to explain autism, how to explain anxiety to kids. And these are, they're built in a way that you can actually print them out and give them to parents as part of a feedback packet. If you are not the one that's having that conversation directly with the kid, or you can use it to have the conversation directly with the child. So the blog is there. We also have the tools that you mentioned. It's funny because it's so simple. It's just 4 boxes, and it just has highways, construction zones, because that's the metaphor that I love to use for talking about strengths and growth points. Helpful words, which is just the diagnostic terms that we're using to help a child and the parents understand their profile. And then tools and construction crew. That's our recommendations. And so it's just a very child-friendly and parent-friendly way of summarizing the assessment for your feedback session. I use it in school meetings. Teachers love this thing because they don't want to read a 20-page report. Or we don't give them the 20-page report more often, and they feel like they're in the dark because they just have to absorb everything in the meeting. So it's just a really easy way to do that. So again, just tools that I've used. How to prepare your child for testing is another really popular tool. Again, it's a Google Doc that you can download and edit for your own practice. And then you mentioned AI. So I'm really excited about AI and how these tools can help us as practitioners not only be more efficient, which is kind of the obvious use, but actually be better communicators and make our work more accessible to our families.
Yep.
And I think there's so much potential here for being able to create parent-friendly reports, to structure information in a way that's going to be really accessible, and to create metaphors and examples that are going to speak to an individual child or to a family's context, which is just so helpful. So you'll see the prompt libraries there, and that actually leads you to a whole page of resources on AI, including a upcoming workshop. And depending when this is published, it'll be upcoming or it will be recorded. So you can check out that workshop that has some really specific things that we can do as practitioners. So those are some of the basic tools that are on the practitioner tools part. And we mentioned the visuals and videos spreadsheet that has all these different links to kid-friendly ways of explaining a ton of different profiles. It's really helpful for feedback sessions.
Yes. Yeah, I haven't even visited some of this stuff in a while, and I'm like, wow, it's exploded.
There's a lot there, and it's meant to be used. So I really encourage you to use it and share it and make your practice better. I mean, that's what we're here for. And as I said, we iterate on these tools. People write me back and say, I made this change, and what do you think? And then that inspires me to do something different. And so it's been putting this stuff out into the world has been just this way of having a conversation with the community about what we need to do our work.
Yeah. As you've been, because you've been kind of on the AI front for a while now, what are kind of some of the key things that you think are important for psychologists to be thinking about as they are like starting to incorporate AI into their practices? And I know that you'll go into a lot of this in your training, but just kind of maybe like a couple nuggets.
Yeah. So I think number one is that AI is a tool. It will not take over our jobs because it is a tool in our toolbox. It is not us. And it is as useful as we can make it. So the phrase that comes to mind is that AI is our co-pilot. It's not autopilot. And so we can use it as a co-pilot to help us with a couple key things. One is helping us create information that is parent friendly and very readable. It helps us structure information. So when you have so much information that you've consumed and you need to put it into, 3 paragraphs or 5 bullet points, kind of how do you take all of that's in our heads that we understand and to structure it in a way that's going to be consumable in a report. And then it helps us to really get creative in how we are explaining things. And so finding real world examples, I love to put, find me real world examples of how we use working memory, or how a 10-year-old might use working memory in the real world. So I can make it very tangible for families, or create a metaphor. Oh, I was working with a kid who is dyslexic and quite young and loves football, and so I asked it to create a football metaphor to explain dyslexia for a kid, and I won't be able to repeat the metaphor verbatim, but it was great. It was awesome.
Wow.
And we can do that in to really help make things consumable, playful, and easy to engage with. And so I think that there's just so much potential for us to make things accessible for families in a way that is really hard when we're trained in this jargony, deficit-based language, to really turn things around, to make them strength-based, to make them positive, to make them easy to consume, to make them contextually relevant without us spending 25 hours writing this document.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there are a lot of things that we're going to have access to now as professionals that are, I think, really going to challenge us to go to the next level in our ability to really understand what's going on and how to communicate that to families and how to support them. So like we can free ourselves up a bit from the writing and focus more on how, like, what this actually means and how we can help because we understand this better. So like less trying to figure out how to say it. Because what I find with AI, for example, is I find that if like I can say what I'm trying to say, like I know what I'm trying to say, I say it, but I don't have to be so meticulous anymore about how I'm saying it, because then I can ask AI to rephrase it for me. But it's still, and not make anything up, right? Like say what I'm actually trying to say. Don't make anything up. Don't infer anything from what I'm saying. Just like explain it in a way that's like just better than how I'm saying it right now. And then sometimes sometimes I have to rephrase it even then, but it is helpful in that way.
Oh, this is another skill that we'll be talking about at the AI workshop, the beginning of March. So there's two things that I think as I was going through, how do I use AI? And again, trying to operationalize it for myself to see how am I using these tools and how am I making sure that I'm being very ethical in my use of these tools. And there were two things. I've slightly lost my train of thought, but I know that one of the things in kind of using this is that we want to always follow a process of reviewing the information that we're about to put into the AI so that we know what we're talking about. We have that information in our head. So if it's a document, if it's whisk results, if it's whatever it is, that we've already consumed it and kind of started to come to conclusions. So we're doing the clinical work. Then we ask ChatGPT to generate something, or Bastion, or depending on what platform we're using, we ask the AI to generate something for us, and then we edit it. And those three steps are really, really important to our practice. We're not automating things because our clinical eye is not covered by the AI. And so we know what it is. We ask it to help us organize and say it right, like you were saying, and then we go back and edit. The other skill that I realize that a lot of practitioners will be developing is how to talk back to AI. And I think that you are kind of implying that when we first produce something, it's like, oh, it's not quite what I wanted. I have to go like rephrase and adjust. But we can actually have a conversation with this tool to say, hey, it needs to be a little more parent friendly. Or I was putting in like parent friendly and positive, and I'm like, ooh, too positive. Like I need to sound a little more professional. Can you be a little more concise? Can you go into more depth? And we can actually get really good at giving it the right fit information or asking it to tweak for us so that our job doesn't suddenly go from writing to editing. But we're not taking our clinical eye off the ball.
Right. I think that's really important because that's why it's not going to take our job. It still does need us, because if you just because I've done that before, right? Just put a PDF in and been like, interpret this. And I'm like, oh yeah, no.
Nope.
Nope. Yeah. All right. Well, those are super helpful. Thank you for sharing that, and just for everything that you have on here. And so you do have courses that, like, different CEs and things that you have already done, and then they live on your site so people can access them.
Yep. So I'm now offer APA approved CEs. So that's very exciting. That's pretty new. And I have four CE workshops up that are available right now. And so there's the basics, how you explain learning disabilities to kids. I have a really fantastic course. It's 4 CEs that I did with Dr. Stephanie Nelson and Dr. Allison Wilkinson Smith, who are both incredible practitioners, so knowledgeable on that has a big focus on collaborative assessment and how we use our assessment to empower kids. I did.
It says Jana is a bright student who loves challenges and generating solutions.
Oh, on the logo. Yeah, the image on the website is all about Jana.
It is. It's all about me. I love it.
Oh, that's funny. Oh, that's hilarious. And then
I'm sorry I interrupted you.
Yeah, no, that's okay. We got one on neurodiversity-affirming assessment specifically, which was probably the most fun workshop that I have done, and just really, again, like breaking down what does it actually look like to do neurodiversity-affirming assessment as opposed to just talking about it conceptually. Then upcoming, we have the one on AI, which again is going to be super practical. You're going to leave with a ton of things that you can do, not just on Monday, but that afternoon, to make your world easier, more empowered, more awesome.
Perfect. Well, maybe I will just have to I'll have to post this. I can't remember what the lineup is for Fridays, but maybe I'll just do like a bonus episode coming out on a non-Friday so that people know about this before it happens. Because it is fun when people are live, you know?
Super fun,
Yeah.
especially because there's going to be questions. I mean, this one there, as I said, there will be a recording, but if you're able to attend live, it's going to be really fun because we're going to have some providers there that you can ask questions to directly. Like, Bastian will be there and some other surprise guests will be there to actually answer questions live. And we're going to have a lot of playtime so that you can try stuff out in vivo and then come back and ask me questions about it. So it's going to be a working workshop, not a webinar.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. A friend of mine just said, "Hey, how about we like go to your house again?" Because we watched one of yours another time where we just like sat on my couch with coffee. And she's also a psychologist in the area. She doesn't work with me, but she's a friend of mine. And she's like, "Doesn't that sound great? We'll just grab a coffee and sit on your couch with your dog and watch Dr. Liz." I'm all, "Yeah, that sounds amazing."
That's awesome. This time you got to have your computers out though.
Yeah, for sure.
You gotta be working
on the big screen. Yeah, we put you on the big screen and then we'll have a working computer.
I love it. That's
awesome.
Great.
Okay, well, okay, let's shift a little bit and talk about you have like your resources for families and you have a new book that's coming out.
Yeah. So there's also right next to practitioner tools on the Explaining Brains website is parent tools. And that is actually, you can put explainingbrains.com/parents in your report as a recommendation. Right. There's a ton of resources there.
I do. Yeah.
And there's the same articles, just written slightly differently for parents about how to talk to your child. But also, if you click on the ADHD icon, for example, you get a whole page of resources for ADHD. So that the visuals and videos spreadsheet is there. There's a little webinar, a little video about talking to your kid about ADHD. And there's a bunch of resources and they're repeated throughout. So wherever the parent goes, they're going to find the most exciting stuff. And there's some articles. I wrote a series called What's Next. And this is walking parents through how to understand your child's report, how to get support at school, and some additional resources of just like how to get started, the literal what's next. And there's a lot of just podcasts and other handouts that's on here to help families on their journey. So any of those resources that's helpful that and they're really designed for us as practitioners to put in our reports as kind of a here, go here, start here. And for you to be able to find things or for parents to explore on their own, because sometimes, I mean, we can't overwhelm them with so many things, but we can say, here's a resource that when you're ready, you can go explore.
Yeah, I love that. People can really go down a rabbit hole here. There. Yeah, I love it. I like my favorite page in your book about the one that says empowering your anxious child, and it has the amygdala doing the crazy tongue face. I love that. That's my favorite.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great
kids page. Love that.
So you mentioned the book. Yeah, they love that. And the brain building book, was created for us as practitioners. And so there's a manual for it, and it takes a lot of kind of understanding of what strengths are going to be relevant to write in here, to the child's profile, and what challenges, and how we really only want to put one or two things that are most relevant for the child. And it's a lot of open-ended stuff that's hard to navigate as a parent. And so I've been working on, with the same illustrators, I've been working on a new book that's just for parents. That's kind of an off the shelf. I can order this from Amazon and use it to talk to my child about their diagnosis. And it walks them through the same metaphor. And the coolest thing about this book is that the kid and the parent do it together. They are both learning about their brain. And so there's a page that says about about me, and the kid fills in what their favorite things are, what their name is. And then it says about my adult, and the adult fills in their profile. And then throughout the book, every time the kid does something, the adult does it. So the kid writes in their highways, the adult writes in their highways. The kid checks off, there's checklists for different construction projects, and the adult has a side that they're checking off their own construction projects. And so it's really, I've been testing it with families, and it's facilitating these conversations that are just amazing and so like touching. Just when kids are coming up with highways that their parents should write down for themselves, or when the kid's like, actually, mom, you have trouble coping with your feelings too, we should both check this off. It just is, it's normalizing things, and it's really empowering and making sure the kid feels like, okay, I'm not alone. We're kind of in this together. So it's been really fun to write, and I'm hoping it'll come out like end of April, beginning of May. You'll start to see stuff for it.
Awesome. That's so exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm stoked about this one. I'm very, very excited.
Yeah. I can really see that bringing kids and families together. And you also get a lot of times when we're testing kids, there's so many times that the family at the end is like, oh, yep, that explains me a lot too. Right. And so they can really kind of connect with their kids about some things too, I think.
Exactly. And the invitation in the book, the invitation is kind of there between the lines to say, like, also my brain is built just like yours, but it's not a requirement. So the part that's about, like some types of brains have a name, and there's, lots of different examples. It's ADHD and autism and dyslexia and all kinds of different options. And it says that, if ask your adult if your brain has a name and write it here. But it doesn't have an equal thing for the adult to do that. So we're not assuming the adult has a diagnosis, but because it's been putting kids and adults through this kind of my turn, your turn, there's an invitation there for adults to also share if they're comfortable and if it's relevant of kind of what their neurotype shares with their kid.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, the last time I talked to you, you were doing a whole bunch of talks, and you were seeing kids in your practice, and you were realizing that it's like when you first start getting started doing something, and then you're like, whoa, I need to find some balance here. And so tell us, like, what is 2025 bringing for you as as you look into this year? What are, like, how are you managing all the things that you're doing? I'm switching a little to like your entrepreneurship and like how you're balancing your life, and the kinds of things that we can look for, like how much are you going to be presenting? Are you doing a lot of stuff online? What's going on for your year?
Yeah. So the balance is the eternal quest, right? That
Yeah.
I don't know if somebody's found it. I need to talk to them because it eludes me. But I am really putting the focus on creating materials and this new book. I want to do a lot more writing and really continue to build out this website and this resource. I'm hoping to put more time into that and just reduce the number of assessments that I'm doing. And we'll balance that out. I made a shift in my practice that the way that we do assessments now is that we have a parent support piece where they work with my colleague for that while they're on my wait list, they'll work with my colleague for parent support. And so parents are getting much more holistic kind of wraparound support in things like collaborative proactive solutions, the Ross Green approach, learning that, or just getting help with advocating for what their kid needs at school. So I brought somebody into my practice who's doing a lot of that support work, which has been amazing for families. And then that's kind of allowed me to really focus just on the assessment piece and have some collaboration on the support piece, which has been helpful to kind of narrow my focus to the thing that I do best.
Right. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm always kind of thinking about how to figure out what the need is and change, the experience of people to like get what they need faster sometimes, right? And sometimes they do have to wait for an assessment, but maybe they need some help faster than that, right?
Well, there's so much we can do that's like you have a child who's struggling, and it doesn't matter what their diagnosis is at that point, just to say like, okay, let's bolster your parenting skills. Let's put you through, this is beyond parenting 101. You need the 201 course. So let's give you parenting 201. We have strategies that work for that. Or if the need is just, my child has my child is really struggling at school, and they, we want to pursue this assessment, but we don't know what to do in the meantime because they're struggling and everybody's got a wait list. And so how do we collaborate with the school to put some, for now, support in place, based on some basic stuff we know about how to support kids who are struggling. And you don't need a specific diagnosis for a lot of kind of basic supports that we can do that kind of tier 2, based on the information that we can collect from interviews. And so we start with that, and then that helps to inform the assessment because we've tried some of the kind of standard tier 2 kinds of things. And families don't feel like they're just waiting, twiddling their thumbs while their child is suffering. They're getting that support, and they feel really held. And sometimes they don't need the assessment. Sometimes it works so well that they contact me and they're like, you know what? We want to get off your wait list. And that's the best result.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And I always say like the assessment is really just the first step. It's what they do after that moves the needle in any way, right? So if you have already started moving that needle, I mean, you don't always need an assessment. Or, I mean, the sooner there's some relief or some progress, that's what we're going for. It's not just like, here's the assessment. Thank you. Goodbye.
Right.
Yeah, it's been great here. In my practice, I've grown it into a more multidisciplinary team so that we have services that we can provide for families that are not just the assessment. It's been really beautiful just kind of seeing these families like thrive with the different resources that we're able to provide, and then like not having to just say goodbye to that family once we do the assessment and then just hope they are doing okay. Right. We don't see every family after assessment, but when we get to see some and they stick around, it's nice to see them grow.
That's cool.
It's like the thing that we liked to do in schools, right? But in private practice, we don't always get to see that piece. And so it feels a little bit more like that. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Liz, I'm just thrilled that you spent some time with me today and shared all that you did. I really appreciate you coming back.
Well, thanks for having me. This is always, as I said, it's always fun to talk to you. So I will.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Hanging out.
That's amazing. And yeah, it's just always great to spend time with like-minded professionals and people who are just like really, I don't know, you just help our field so much. So I just really appreciate everything that you're doing. And yeah, I'm, just period, the end. Yeah. Thank you.
Fantastic. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Well, I'm sure that we will talk soon. And again, thanks so much for being on the show.
Of course.
That is it for today's episode of the Empower LEP podcast. I hope that you found this conversation insightful and inspiring as you navigate your journey in private practice. If you enjoyed the episode, I'd love for you to subscribe and leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps us reach more LEPs and school psychologists who are looking to build their own path in private practice. For more resources and community, you can connect with me at empowerlep.com, on Instagram at EmpowerLEP, on Facebook in the Empower LEP Facebook group, or by email at jana@empowerlep.com. And just a quick reminder, the information shared on this podcast is for educational purposes only and should not be considered legal, business, or clinical advice. Be sure to consult with the appropriate professionals for guidance on your specific situation. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, you have the skills, you have the knowledge, and you have the power to create a private practice that truly makes an impact.